All right, ready to dive into Win Your Inner Battles.
Let's do it.
So this book by Darius Foroux, it's kind of like a personal coaching session, on conquering fear and like figuring out how to live with more purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that description.
It's cool because it's got personal stories and like all these philosophical bits and then bam, practical advice all mixed together.
That's what I really enjoyed about it, too. It's not just theory. He gives you actual, tangible things you can try. The goal here is to, really help you understand those fears that might be holding you back, right? And then to give you the tools to actually overcome them.
Exactly. So you can, have a life that feels fulfilling and less stressful.
And more aligned with what you actually care about.
Yes. Okay, so Forough, right off the bat, he shares his own story. Leaving a secure job, like knowing it could mean losing friends, health issues, maybe even like financial struggles.
Oh, it's brave.
Super brave, right. It's like he's saying, hey, I get it, growth is scary, but it's possible.
And it's so worth it. Which is, I think, what a lot of us need to hear. Because, through these experiences he's had, he pinpoints these two big battles we all face internally.
Fear.
Fear and lack of confidence.
Oh, yes. Every single day.
He doesn't try to, pretend it's not a thing. He just says, hey, we all struggle with this stuff. But it's not about, getting rid of fear entirely.
Right. It's more like, how do we deal with it?
Yeah, how do we respond to it so it doesn't control us?
There's this part where he talks about the news, right? All that negative news we're bombarded with, constantly. He even mentions this research, 65% of our thoughts are negative.
Very wild, right?
Crazy. But also, kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, it's our brain,
Okay.
always looking out for danger. But it kept our ancestors alive way back when. But nowadays, not so helpful.
Definitely not. So then, how do we manage all this fear?
That's where he brings in this stoicism thing, which honestly I was not super familiar with before. But the basic idea, it's about focusing on the things you can control, your actions and how you think.
I like that because it seems really practical.
Right. So much in life feels totally out of our hands.
Okay, so how do you actually use the Stoic approach, like in real life?
So he gives all these examples of common fears, right? Losing your job, having to speak in public, even ending a relationship. And then he asks us to break it down. Are we scared of something happening to us? Or are we scared to actually take action?
That's a good distinction.
Yeah, because it helps you figure out where the anxiety is really coming from. Then, the big question, what's the worst that could happen?
But why would you want to think about the worst thing? That seems kind of counterproductive.
I know, right? But think of it like, shining a light on the monster under the bed. Once you see it clearly, it's not that scary anymore. Foroux, he used this example of Chris, who was terrified of getting fired. So he imagines the worst case, getting fired, struggling financially, and by doing that, he starts to, accept it.
So it's like a mental rehearsal almost.
Exactly. And then, you're not so paralyzed by the fear anymore.
I love how he uses Floyd Mayweather as an example, the boxer, right?
Oh, yeah, the champ.
He visualized his win before every fight, like actually playing it out in his mind. So it's almost like training your mind to believe in a positive outcome, even when things are tough.
100%.
Yeah.
And once you can accept that worst case scenario, taking action becomes way easier because you're not so afraid anymore, which is the perfect setup for that next stage, moving from fear to action.
Yeah, Foroux talks about how real confidence comes from competence.
He calls it confidence by competence. And it's basically you build your confidence by getting good at something, like mastering a new skill.
It's not just talking a big game, it's actually having the ability to back it up.
You know that Confucius quote, when it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps.
So good. Focus on what you can do, right? Take those small steps that lead to bigger wins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Start small, break those big, scary goals down into manageable chunks. That's what he says. And it makes so much sense.
It's all about momentum. Celebrate those small victories. Don't get bogged down by how much there is to do.
And if things don't go perfectly, see it as a learning experience, not a failure.
Embrace that growth mindset, right? Okay, so we've talked about understanding our fears and then actually taking action, but what's the point of all this?
Right. There's got to be more to it.
What's the deeper why behind all these inner battles?
Well, here's the thing. 4-0, he says, conquering fear isn't just about feeling less anxious. It's about, freeing ourselves up to live a life with actual meaning. If we're constantly fighting those inner demons, we don't have the energy or the clarity to, to pursue our passions or to make a real difference.
So it's kind of like clearing the path, getting rid of all that mental clutter so we can focus on what truly matters.
Exactly. Reading this, it really hit me how much Foroux talks about time, like the value of time. He even brings up Seneca, that Roman philosopher. Remember him? He was all about living intentionally, making every moment count.
Because once it's gone, right? No do-overs.
Nope. And Seneca, he believed we waste so much time, you know,
Yeah.
on things that don't actually matter, like mindless scrolling, gossip.
That stuff that doesn't really make us happy in the long run.
Exactly. So Foroux, he challenges us to think about our time differently, to invest it in things that line up with our values.
Like spending time with people we love or learning new things.
Right.
And he's not saying you have to make these drastic changes all at once.
It's more about like little by little, consistent action over time. What if like you just took 30 minutes a day to read something that expands your knowledge?
Or that helps you grow as a person.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
It all comes down to being mindful, right? How are we actually spending our time? Is it reflecting what we really care about?
Speaking of choices, Foro has some really interesting thoughts on decision making. I don't know about you, but I've definitely been there. Frozen by fear, like, what if I make the wrong decision?
Oh, all the time. New job, new city. It can be paralyzing.
Totally. But Foro, he has this really different perspective. He says, there are no wrong decisions.
Now, wait a minute. How can that be? Surely some decisions turn out better than others, right?
I know, right? But hear him out. He's not saying all outcomes are equal. What he means is every decision, no matter the result, it's a chance to learn something. Like, think of it as an experiment. You get data, you see what happened, and you use that for next time.
So even if things don't go exactly how we planned, there's still something valuable to be gained.
Exactly. We can't predict the future. So it's all about, like, making the best choice we can right now, trusting ourselves, and being open to whatever happens.
Yeah, it reminds me of that story we were talking about earlier about Samuel Leibowitz, that lawyer who saved all those people from the electric chair. He didn't know how things would turn out when he took those cases. He just knew it was the right thing to do.
Right. And it had this huge ripple effect, way beyond those individual lives.
Like a powerful reminder that even small acts of generosity can be so impactful.
Which brings us back to Forough's point about generosity, right? He's a big believer in giving without expecting anything in return. And he emphasizes it doesn't have to be this huge, grand gesture. It could be like a kind of word, helping a colleague.
Or donating to a cause you care about. It's about shifting our focus, outward, recognizing that we're all connected in some way.
And then on the flip side, he also talks about the importance of saying no, which a lot of us struggle with. We feel like we have to say yes to everything. Family, friends, work.
Oh, yeah. And then you end up feeling totally overwhelmed and burnt out. For A, he reminds us it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
Especially to things that, don't match up with your goals or what you believe in.
It's about boundaries, protecting your time, your energy, because those are valuable.
You can't pour from an empty cup, as they say. Saying no to some things means you can say yes to the things that really matter.
He brings up this idea that we're basically the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with.
That's a bit scary when you think about it.
Yeah, if you're surrounded by negativity, that's going to rub off, right?
Right.
But if you're with people who are positive and supportive.
Their energy, it can lift you up.
Okay.
So choose your company wisely, I guess. Make sure those people are helping you become the best version of yourself.
This all connects to something else Foro talks about, comparing ourselves to others, which, in the age of social media, it's so hard not to do.
Yeah, it's a trap. Everyone seems to have these perfect lives,
It's easy to get caught up in that comparison game, but it's a recipe for feeling terrible. 4-0, he reminds us, everyone is on their own journey. You can't compare your beginning to someone else who's like miles ahead.
Right. It's like comparing apples and oranges. We all have different strengths, different weaknesses, different experiences.
And focusing on what other people are doing just distracts you from your own path.
Exactly. He says all that comparing often leads to, like, looking for external validation. We start chasing after things that we think will make us look good to others.
Instead of doing what actually matters to us.
He even uses Elon Musk, as an example. Musk, he's super successful, but he's not the president or a basketball star or the next Einstein. The point is, we all have different talents. Instead of comparing, we should focus on developing our own strengths.
I love that. Celebrate the diversity, right? 4-0 also talks about how important it is to, embrace our individuality. He says, there's no one else quite like you.
Our unique perspective, all those experiences we've had, those are valuable. Don't try to fit in. Embrace what makes you different.
Then use those unique gifts to make a positive impact.
Which brings us right back to purpose. This is really the core of his book. If you don't have a clear sense of purpose, it's so easy to get lost.
Yeah.
All the noise and distractions of life.
It's like trying to navigate a maze without a map. Purpose, it gives you direction, a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
And Forough says, purpose, it's not something you just find. It's something you create. It's a decision. What do you want your life to be about? What are you passionate about? How can you use your talents to make a difference?
It's like that feeling you get when you're doing something you truly love. Time just disappears. You're totally in the zone.
Exactly. He talks about Viktor Frankl again, who, remember, was a Holocaust survivor. Frankl said that people who had a reason to live, a purpose that gave them meaning, they were the ones who were more likely to survive.
It's amazing, the power of purpose.
So Forough suggests one way to figure out your purpose is through what he calls life's work. Find something you're passionate about and really dedicate yourself to it. It doesn't have to be your job title or how much money you make. It's about, what gives you that sense of fulfillment. How can you contribute to the world in a way that matters to you?
And he gives us some tips for finding that purpose, right?
Yeah, he encourages trying new things, getting out of your comfort zone. You never know what might spark something.
Be curious, explore different paths, see where life takes you.
And remember Will Smith's advice. Just decide what it's going to be, who you're going to be, how you're going to do it. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Make a choice and then commit.
A lot of it comes down to just deciding, right? And then actually taking action. But look, even when we figure out our purpose and we're living intentionally, we're still going to have negative emotions sometimes. We all face challenges, setbacks, doubt.
That's part of life, right?
But Forough, he says happiness is a skill, something you can practice. I like that idea.
Me too. Because often we think of happiness as something that just happens to us. But what if we actually have more control than we realize?
Okay, so how do we get better at being happy?
Well, he says it starts with how we manage our thoughts. We can't always control what happens around us, but we can control how we react to it. And that reaction, it all starts in our minds.
He uses this great analogy. He says most people's thoughts are like a movie theater, constantly replaying the past or worrying about the future.
And we get stuck in those loops, and that creates so much stress, it prevents us from being present.
So how do we break free?
He says we have to shift our thinking, focus on the positive. And it's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing to focus on the good, even when things are tough.
Like, say you're stuck in traffic. Instead of getting all frustrated, maybe you listen to your favorite music, or you call a friend, or just enjoy looking out the window.
Find the silver lining, those little things that bring you joy. Focus on those. And this is important. Stay positive when you face challenges.
Because those challenges will come. It's part of life.
But how you react to them, that's what makes all the difference. Forough, he reminds us, life is meant to be lived, enjoyed, loved, experienced. It's not meant to be suffered through. So let's embrace those good times and find the strength to get through the tough times. And remember, happiness is a choice we make every day.
This ties into, managing our ego. Forough really emphasizes that. Detaching from our ego, because it often gets in the way of our happiness. It wants to be right all the time.
Yeah, always defending our viewpoint, comparing ourselves to others.
It causes conflict. It causes stress.
He suggests, next time you find yourself getting into an argument, stop and ask yourself, is it me having this argument, or is it my ego? Sometimes just recognizing that can help you step back.
Become more aware of those patterns and then choose to react differently.
Exactly. And he reminds us of that mental exercise for dealing with negative thoughts. Remember those 3 steps. First, step back from the thought. Observe it from a distance.
Like watching clouds float by. Don't get caught up in them.
Then accept the thought without judgment. Just acknowledge it. It's there, it's passing through.
And finally, ignore it. Especially if it's something unreasonable. Not every thought deserves our energy. He says by practicing this, we can start to have more control over our minds. The negative thoughts, they lose their power.
Okay, let's talk about goals for a minute. Forough, he believes goals are important. They give us direction, a roadmap to our dreams. But what he really emphasizes is that the most important thing is the process of setting goals.
It's about the journey, not just the destination.
Right. And he stresses the importance of having a system, something to help you actually achieve those goals, provides structure, accountability, keeps you on track.
It could be a daily routine or a detailed plan, whatever works for you. The point is, have something in place that supports you as you work towards your goals. But also remember, setbacks are going to happen.
They're inevitable. You can't expect to achieve anything without hitting some bumps along the way.
But instead of seeing those setbacks as failures, think of them as opportunities to learn.
That's that growth mindset again, right? Believing that you can develop your abilities through hard work and dedication. And when you hit a challenge, it's not a threat, it's a chance to grow.
It's also important to have a clear why for your goals. Ask yourself, why do I want to achieve this? What will it mean for me? How will it impact my life or the lives of others?
Having a strong purpose behind your goals, that's what keeps you motivated, especially when things get tough.
It's about connecting your goals to something bigger than yourself, giving them meaning. And, even when we do all this, have a purpose, work towards our goals, we're still going to feel fear sometimes. Forough, he even shares examples of, like, professional actors who still get stage fright after years of experience.
Fear, it's normal. It's part of being human. It's what keeps us safe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to control us.
We can learn to manage it and even, like, use it as fuel.
Because often fear is a sign that you're stepping outside your comfort zone. You're pushing yourself to grow.
Embrace that discomfort. It means you're on the right track.
And that's really what Forough's saying in this book. We all have inner battles, but we don't have to fight them alone.
We can understand our fears, take action, find our purpose, think positively, and in doing that, we can win those battles and live a life that's, fulfilling, meaningful. So we've really, like, gone deep on win your inner battles. It's amazing how much practical advice Forough gives us in this book.
I know, right? From understanding our fears to taking action, finding purpose, dealing with that ego, it really is like a complete guide.
One thing that really hit home for me was, like, the importance of self-awareness. He talks about it a lot, really understanding our own minds, our strengths, our weaknesses, the things we're afraid of.
Yeah, it's like you can't win a battle if you don't even know who you're fighting.
And in this case, the opponent is often ourselves, right? Our own thoughts and beliefs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once you understand those, you can start making better choices. Choices that actually align with what you want in life.
Another big takeaway, action, action, action. It's not enough to just, like, read about this stuff.
Oh, definitely not. You got to put it into practice.
Yeah.
Experiment, try things out, even if you mess up.
That's how you build confidence, right?
Huh.
And resilience. You actually become competent.
Speaking of competence, remember that confidence by competence idea. That's where real confidence comes from. Not from, just talking a big game, but actually having the skills to back it up.
And then there's purpose. That, for me, is what ties it all together. Having a clear sense of why you're here, what you want to do. It gives your life meaning, It gives you direction.
When you know your why, it's so much easier to stay focused, to keep going, even when things are tough.
I keep thinking back to Viktor Frankl and man's search for meaning. It's incredible how, even in the worst possible situations, having a purpose can be the thing that keeps you going.
And remember, purpose isn't just going to fall into your lap.
You have to create.
Figure out what you're passionate about, how you can use your talents to make a difference.
Sometimes it takes, trying different things, stepping outside your comfort zone. It's a journey.
And even when we find our purpose and we're, like, living with intention, we're still going to have to keep working at it. Winning those inner battles, it's an ongoing thing.
It's not like you reach the finish line and you're done.
It's about showing up every day, making the choice to live in a way that aligns with your values.
And being kind to yourself along the way, right?
Right.
We're all human.
We're going to make mistakes, but it's about learning from those mistakes.
Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going.
And celebrate those small victories along the way. Recognize how far you've come.
I'm so glad we got to dive into this book. It's been really inspiring.
Me too. Hopefully, it's encouraged you to start taking control, conquer those fears, and live a life that's more true to yourself.
You have the power, to create the life you want. It starts by winning those inner battles, choosing to focus on what really matters. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.